God knows where we're going. And if He is our foundation, then He's going to be enough and make sure we're prepared in the right ways for what's ahead, even when we don't know what the cost will be. He does. You can be confident in that He is building the right foundation that you need to do that going forward.
So we are 5 months into the year already. We're at May. I cannot believe it. I don't think you can believe it, Erin. And I think that when we first met way back in January, I think it was, having this conversation about you're going to take a Sabbath year and I'm going to kind of ramp up my year a little bit and scale it. I I did not see what was going to unfold next couple of months, and I don't think you did either. And we are almost to the halfway point. Next month will be halfway of the year, but I think that I feel the transition to the next season. I think you do too. We're both in the South, and so it's going to be 88 degrees for today. Summer is upon us, and I think with that just comes a natural like reevaluation, a natural like reflection on the last couple months, and being like, okay, what has happened so far? Am I on track? Are we moving forward? And so as we kind of do this little check-in on, are we creating from rest? Are we, hanging in there in a way that is honoring to what God has asked us for this year? Um, I want to just ask you, like, looking back on the last 5 months, are you thinking there's things that you could have done better when it comes to taking a Sabbath year? Or do you feel like you've been doing it pretty well so far?
Oh gosh, what a question. Um, so I don't know how well I'm doing, but God's doing a really good job. I don't know how else to say it than that. I think part of the Sabbath year has just been letting go and admitting that I don't have to be the one in charge. In fact, I should
Mm,
not be the one in charge. I don't have to strive and push down doors and um I don't know, there's part of me that's very perseverant and determined. I had someone use those two words with me this morning in a positive way though. And I feel like that can be a positive thing, but it can also be a negative thing when I refuse to take no for an answer, when instead of waiting on the Lord, I push ahead and try to do things in my own strength, and then I'm exhausted, go figure, because I'm just a person and I'm not supposed to be doing it that way.
yeah.
So this year, as I have kind of taken this step back and taken my hands off the wheel, excuse the, overused metaphor.
Cliche.
It's a cliche, but so true. Um, I don't know. I wasn't really sure what to expect from God, and He
Mm,
has shown up so faithfully and so confidently. And every time that I think, okay, I mean, maybe letting go of this means just watching it fade away or disappear or be gone. He steps in and does something with it that I just never would have expected. And something so much better and more beautiful and meaningful. It's just been really, he's doing a great job.
I love that answer. So the other thing I was going to ask you, because I was thinking about this the other day, is that sometimes when I take a break from things, it's kind of hard to want to go back into, especially when I know it takes a lot of work and energy. And I'm like, do I really want to pick this back up? I mean, simple things like exercise, like you're in a good rhythm and then you take a break from it and then you're like, I don't know if I want to go back to that or not. Um, are you feeling that way at all with like the things you put down? Like, have you contemplated just being like, forget this whole author thing. I'm just gonna focus on my present life and just be in the moment and not worry about publishing books and all the online stuff. Has that crossed your mind at all in the last couple months?
No, I can't wait to start writing again. Um, and I have big plans for 2025, very big plans. Um, but there are parts of it that I won't go back to, if that
Mhm.
makes sense, but not the author life in general. I am, yeah, like fighting back from really diving into writing right now. And I'm enjoying my journal time and just kind of writing through what God is showing me. And I definitely can tell this year is going to turn into a book. Um, so I am really struggling to not be writing that book right now, to
Mm,
just be writing um, my I don't want to say my book, but just focus on not what does this mean for anybody else, but just what does it mean for me? Just stay right here within this moment, within me and God. And later, I can help translate that to others or whatever. But
Yeah.
I am having to fight that urge because it does come so naturally. And one of my gifts is teaching. So anything that I learn, I want to immediately pass on to everyone I know.
Mhm.
Whether it's, a new recipe or how to garden or anything. So especially when it's a spiritual lesson from God, I can't wait. I can't
Yeah.
wait to get back to the writing and translating all of this for others. But in the meantime, I'm just learning it myself, trying to learn it well.
Yeah. And documenting it in the process.
Yeah.
I like the fact that you're, like, documenting, not interpreting. You're just
Yes.
documenting it and not analyzing it. You're just being true to what's happening. That's
Yeah.
great. So you mentioned that there are some things you're not gonna go back to. So what are some of those things?
I, I don't
Identify
use
them.
social media at all. Not at all. I mean, 0%. I said, go back. I don't know what that means, but I just don't know. I don't know. We'll see. Um, the podcast, if I do go back, it will look different. I'll have to batch it all ahead of time. I'm not going to be working on that continuously throughout the year. So I don't know what that will look like or if it will come back. I am looking forward to going back to weekly devotion emails. They started out kind of every other week, and now they've become every 3 weeks. And, they are what they are. When one comes up that I feel compelled to share, I share it, but I'm not stuck on a schedule. But I am looking forward to just that accountability to stay writing every week, to keep current
Mhm.
lessons coming up all the time.
So you said that accountability.
Mhm.
This is something I struggle with because as a writer, you hear this all the time, like, "Oh, you need to stay consistent. If you say you're gonna do something, you need to do it." Sometimes I think to myself, nobody is going to care whether or not this email goes out today. Nobody's gonna care if this podcast goes out today. Sometimes it's really hard for me to use that as accountability because we're not seeing those people. Like, if those people were in a room and I was supposed to show up and meet them there, I totally would be there, right? Because
Yeah.
the physical, like, they're right in front of my face. But because I don't see them and they're just this, like, thing that supposedly is true, sometimes I have a hard time using it as an accountability for myself. Do you struggle with that at all, or do you find that you've kinda worked around that in a way?
I don't know. I don't know that I'm feeling accountable to the readers as much as I am to myself and to God, because I know He is showing me something I need to learn once a week, if not every day. And so as I'm going through this season, I'll notice things where when I do my devotions, it always starts with a story, something that happens in the day, in the week, just, something that happens. And I feel in my soul there's something to be learned here. And it usually
Mhm.
isn't until I sit down to write out the story that God shows me what it is. Um, so I'm very much a pantser when it comes to the devotions. I don't know where it's going when I started out. And so I feel like when I don't sit down to write it and figure it out, I miss the lesson that God has for me in that.
Mm.
And I miss a connection that was there that I didn't make. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No,
So,
I think it
yeah.
falls more into your, like, you're stewarding the time that you've set aside rather than striving to make it something,
Mhm.
and I really like that. I think I'm gonna have to make that mindset shift for myself. Like, I talk about this a lot about stewarding the thing that God has asked you to do instead of, like, striving to make it happen, but I never made that connection as far as, like, these things that I know I'm supposed to do. Like, I like that you said, "I'm not accountable to the reader, I'm accountable to myself and to God," and I think that's really smart that we make a commitment to do something, and whether or not there's somebody on the other end listening or reading, it doesn't matter because God's asked us to steward that time of showing up and creating something. And so, um, thank you for sharing that because I think I need to make that mindset shift,
Yeah.
especially right now, because emails are not my favorite.
Well, and the wonderful thing too is that when we show up, God shows up, right?
Mm,
If I make the commitment, yes, I'm going to sit down and work on this. Yes, I'm going to listen to what you have for me. He's going to tell me. And so if we miss that, it's not that he wasn't faithful in that time, it's that we weren't faithful in that time.
so good. So as far as what you are currently working on,
Mhm.
well, or not working on, depending how you look at it,
Then
things are happening. So remind me and those listening what your kind of like boundary is with what counts as work and needs to be set aside for the year and what counts as like something you can entertain during
yeah.
this time.
So it is basically nothing for personal gain, I think is kind of the short motto, the lens I'm putting everything through. An example for something that I'm doing and not doing right now is someone had sent me a brand new book awards that's coming out this year. And some of the struggle that I have with book awards is with my children's chapter books. There's never a good category. There's middle grade novels and there's picture books, but there's never a
Mm.
category for children's chapter books.
No.
And I finally found one and an internet that was that was last year. Like this year, they just started a new one and it has like the perfect category. It's the perfect organization. Like when okay, my message is going to resonate with these
Mhm.
judges, with this audience. It's a good fit. And it's the first year they're doing it, so of course your chances of placing are a lot better this year.
Mhm.
These are all of the legitimizing reasons and justifications that I'm giving to myself of why I might possibly be able to break the rules and put it in. And honestly, like, is it self-promotion? Because if people see the book, it's expanding God's kingdom through putting this message into other people's hands, blah, blah, blah. All this sounds so good. And it's all lies, right? It's this is this for me? Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely for me. And so I kept finding myself going back to the webpage and just looking at it again, like just seeing if possibly there was some way I could make this not seem like it was about me. How's
Some
that?
way you could justify it.
I know. I'm like, surely there's a way I can justify this. So what I finally did was I signed up to be a judge. So now I am disqualified. So I'm going to be participating in my first awards as a judge, and I'm really excited about it. So does this judging fall under work? No, because I'm disqualifying myself. This is the way that I can participate, but if I really wanted to help other authors
Yeah.
um, refine their messages, give good feedback, help the industry put good messages into the world. This is a way I can do it that is not about me, right? And also makes it to where I cannot give into this temptation to enter these awards that I could
Yeah.
still enter until May 22nd, except now I'm a judge, so now I can't.
So much.
Here you go. That's one thing I'm doing and not doing right now to kind of show the lines.
I love that so much. I appreciate what you have done for
Your
yourself
honesty.
because I know what you mean that like,
Yeah.
okay, well, I could just do this. I could just make this little caveat, like this thing gives me permission. And
It
the
doesn't
moment you
count
start
because.
the moment you
Yeah.
start making justifications in any area where there's supposed to be a boundary,
Yeah.
the moment when you start making justifications, that's when you know you're not being true and honoring. And there's something different between like a true reason for something to be
Yeah.
set aside and a justification to
Yeah.
break it. And we know instinctively, we know in our core
Yeah.
if we're paying attention to it. And I think when you're in a season like this, you're paying attention to it a little bit more than you normally would.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty of even like a weekly Sabbath rhythm and then these like more bigger Sabbath, sabbatical type rhythms too in our lives because it inevitably every week when Sabbath almost gets here, I struggle with, well, I have these things I still need to get done every week. And I could legitimately justify working on those things. And every week I start to have this struggle. Now, when I'm more in like a regular rhythm and things are not so busy, it shows up less. But the moment things get busy, the harder it is for me to take that weekly rest, the harder it is for me to set it down and trust that me taking a break doesn't mean that God's taking a break, or
Yeah.
trust that me taking a break is not going to be completely detrimental because it's going to 100% like all depends on me. And if I don't do this thing, then the whole world's going to fall apart. Like it reminds you that none of that is true. It's all lies. And those little justifications are just that. They're just little lies creeping in to get you to try to do things on your own, try to strive your way into getting things done instead of just stewarding and resting and picking it back up when it needs to be picked back up. And
Mm.
when you're not resting, you don't have the energy to steward it well when you are working on it. And so if you would just rest, you would have more energy for when you go back to it. But it's so hard. It's so hard in the moment to not just want to completely give in to the temptation to
Yeah.
break that boundary and whatnot. So thank you for sharing about that. I know that probably feels really like vulnerable to share that, but um I think it's helpful to kind of see the difference for you. As far as what's going on right now, so are you're documenting the ways that God is working in your life, and you are saying yes to things that are coming up and no to things that aren't, that fall outside of the boundaries that you already have set up. So you have some really strong boundaries, and I love that you're being really intentional about them and you're saying no when the little like voice in the back of your head tries to justify getting around those boundaries. So what are some of the things that you are focusing your time on right now that aren't in that category of personal gain?
Yeah. So I have, and I spoke about this last time, I had the book contract and I just signed last week. So that is finally official. But it's just really neat that with the timing of that, God has planned it out so that I really do nothing until next year on that. So it won't come out until spring of 2026. And really, this is one of those things that God has orchestrated from the beginning. I went to a conference not looking for an agent, but didn't want to waste an agent appointment and ended up signing with an agent. That was last year. And then we had finalized all of the book proposal and sent that out in December. So, right before I quit everything, and, even an offer that I had gotten earlier this year would have required me to do some pretty significant work on the manuscript, during this year, and so I had turned that one down, and now, someone else has picked it up and we've signed, so that'll come out with Our Daily Bread in spring of 2026, which means I really do nothing with it, no edits, nothing until 2025. So, even though it's a really long runway to get a book off the ground, I'm like, 2 years? Really? God knew exactly what he was doing because now I can literally not think about this, and I probably won't even announce on social media. I still haven't put anything up like, "I signed," or anything because, yeah, this is just not the focus this year. So
Yeah. So, what things are you doing in your personal life that have come up during this time?
oh goodness, okay. Do you want a story? Story time
Yes.
with Erin. Um Okay, so I had talked last time about some of these really ugly things that were coming up in my life related to pride. So let me give you a specific one that I wasn't going to share, but God is just so good that I can't not share. Um, so when I was a kid, I liked doing drama and theatrical stuff. Do you remember Salty, the singing songbook? This was like a
Yes.
90s. I was in, I don't know how many of those, a bunch. So we would do these musicals and it was like a summer camp. Anyway, so I would always audition for the speaking roles and usually get, one of the highest speaking roles or whatever. So at the end of the show, they do the clap for everybody and then they do the clap for the actors. But then after all of that, they would do the big clap for Miss Davis, who had put the whole thing together. And she would come down and get this bouquet of flowers. And I remember as a fifth grader thinking, one day I am going to be the one who gets the bouquet of flowers, right? Because who's this really about? This is
Mhm.
this just shows you how early these achievery things. start coming up in your life. Okay.
Yeah.
So fast forward 15 years, 20, I don't know, a lot of years. Right out of college, my first job was at a church. And so I was hired in May, and in July, they were going to do a musical worship arts camp. And I mean, I am so fresh, but I don't realize it. And I'm working for the most wonderful woman in the world. Her name's Carol Mills. And so she lets me write the script for it because I look at a bunch and they're all super cheesy. And I, of course, am like, nah, I can write something better. That's another achievery line we say to ourselves. I can do that better. And so I wrote a script. I did all the choreography for the dance, for the kids, like worked with all the volunteers. I did not do any of the singing stuff. You don't want to hear me sing. Did the backdrops. I mean, it was like, this was my first big project, and I was so proud of it. It was so much fun. It was my favorite thing. And at the end of the show, they do the big clap, and it's literally like something I haven't thought of for 20 years. Suddenly pops in my mind and is like, this is it. Do you remember that moment? This is your moment. And here's like a volunteer coming across the stage with a bouquet of flowers. And oh, we could not have done this show without the most amazing person who put everything together, Carol Mills, my boss, right? And because nobody knows who I am. I've worked there 6 weeks and I'm this college student or just out of college. And I was livid.
Yeah.
I mean, I was so upset. I was so resentful. Like looking back at 24-year-old me,
You're,
I'm
like,
just
embarrassed by her, aren't
I'm
you?
so embarrassed by her. So Carol always takes her vacation the week after worship arts camp. So she's like, the flowers are gonna die. Do you want them? And she gives them to me. Okay. So I take them home. I pretend like they're for me. No one else lives with me. Like, I'm only pretending for myself because I need the validation of flowers to make me feel like I'm a human being who's accomplished something. Yeah. Okay. So one of the February, March days of horror where God is poking all the places and the Holy Spirit is like, look at this. Look at this. He brings this up. And I am, of course, I'm horrified because this did not happen 1 year. I worked there 5 years. This happened 5 times. 5 times she got flowers. 5 times she gave them to me to take to my house. 5 times I pretended like they were for me.
Way.
Yes, and every year, I would go into the final performance knowing this was gonna happen and, like, "I'm okay. I can be okay. Like, I don't need flowers. Yeah, like, she's the best, and it's all good, and so she should get them." And it did not matter. I felt mad every time. And looking back, I'm like, ugh, it just is so it makes me feel so gross. So much shame came up when that memory came up, so much. It was just bleh. Well, Carol Mills still works at that church, and, she told me recently that she was retiring and she was gonna move to Georgia. And so I am all the feels. I love this woman. She mentored me for 5 years in ways that I can't even put into words how grateful I am for her amazing just example in my life and the way that she dealt with me, my first and all my, achieveriness. And so she was doing a women's night and I knew she was gonna be the speaker, and so my mom and I went because I thought this is gonna be my last time that I get to hear her speak, and I just wanted to see her one more time in that kind of in that capacity. And she did a fantastic job. The whole time I am trying to hold back tears because there's just a lot of emotions about her leaving, and realizing that that season of my life is over. Sorry, long story. So
I love it. Keep going.
at the end, I did not realize she was gonna make the announcement that she was leaving because she hadn't told, everybody yet. I did not know she was gonna do it there live from the stage. Well, she did, and I was a mess. I mean, I was just a wreck. Thank goodness I knew before because and then it really would have been bad. So then she says, anyone who's ever worked on staff with me or anything, these certain categories, please come up on the stage with me. And I mean, I am not okay. And I did not want to go up on that stage. I don't think there's ever been a time in my life where I did not wanna go up on a stage. Usually, if someone calls my name, Miss, Achiever, that's like the dopamine hit I'm waiting for, and I skip on up there all merrily. And I just thought, I don't wanna share this stage with you. I just want you to have this stage. And, so I finally make it up there, and I'm hiding behind people. I've never wanted to just blend into the background more. And there's maybe 30 or 40 women up there who she's really had a big impact in her life. And I'm not even listening to the words she's saying because I'm just trying to not cry. Like, don't cry, don't cry. I'm not succeeding. And she turns and she points to me and she calls me out by name, the only one. And I am just, my mom said, I think you just hid behind someone. I mean, I literally wanted to disappear because her influence and the impact she's had on our community is so enormous. And the years of dedication that she has put into her ministry is phenomenal. And I'm like, I don't deserve to be called out right now. This is your moment. This is all you. And then someone comes across the stage holding, you guessed it, a bouquet of flowers. And they give them to her. And in that moment, I wanted to take that bouquet of flowers so I could give it to her. I wanted bouquets of flowers to rain from the ceiling and just cover the stage for this woman. And I realized that this is the picture of what God wants from us as we serve Him. He wants us to know that, yeah, we do a lot of the work. Sometimes we feel like we do all the work, but He is the one who gets the flowers. Because when we stand in His presence, there's no competition. I mean, we can just see so clearly how great and glorious He is. And when our hearts are in the right place, all we want to do is worship Him and leave everything at His feet and give whatever we can to Him. And I went home that night and I didn't make the connection of the flowers until later. And I was so grateful because he was showing me, you're not the same person as that college girl. It was the same stage with the same woman with the same stinking bouquet of flowers. But God has redeemed that. And He's showing me, look how far I've brought you. Your heart is not the same heart. You don't have the same desires that she did. You have new desires. I am making you new. And I'm not going to stop that work until I'm finished. And so that's just one story of some of the things that he's teaching me and showing me, and kind of the progression of what this year has been, which was like real ugly and gross. And now just so beautiful for him to, I don't know, show me when you see what can be in that moment with her on the stage. I don't want to go back to what that was. I don't want the flowers anymore. You know?
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's sorry, long story.
No, that was so good. And I'm speechless over here because it was such a powerful story. And I think that you were when you were sharing, I resonated with a lot of that because I definitely have been in the past watching people get up and getting accolades and me going, "Oh, I would love to have that for me." I actually had a moment just even this morning where a friend of mine signed another book contract, and there was a part of me that kind of reacted to it, and I was just
Yeah.
like, "Why am I reacting?"
Mhm.
Like like you said, there's not a competition. Like, this person is stewarding what God has asked her to do, and ultimately, He's gonna get the glory for it, right? And I should be excited for her. Like, I should be excited that she is doing what she's supposed to be doing, that she's being obedient, and just because her obedience looks different than mine, and just because maybe my obedience means that things are taking a little bit longer than I would like them to take, doesn't mean that it's any less obedience, and it's not anything less honoring to God and
Yeah.
stewarding what He's asked me to steward. But there is that, like, needing recognition and needing validation that I think especially artists struggle with, right? Creatives struggle
Yeah.
with because a lot of what we do is so internal. The work that
Yeah.
we do is so internal. And then when we share it, it feels like it's a part of us. And so then we need somebody to tell us that it's good
Yeah.
because sometimes we don't even believe we're good. But the fact of the matter is, God has already said that we're good because
Yeah.
what we're doing is not creating something that honors us. We're creating something that honors God. And they think about the fact that we're image bearers, right? Like God created humanity and said it's good. And it was good not because humanity was good, it was good because it was a reflection of Him.
Yeah.
If we live our lives reflecting His goodness and His glory and His faithfulness and reflecting these attributes that are just so beautiful and holy and honoring and righteous, then whatever work we do is going to be impactful.
Yeah.
And we don't need to be validated because it's not us. It's not about us. It's about God. And I think it's easy sometimes to say all of that, and it's a lot harder to walk through it. And I just am so grateful that you shared that because it just reminds me that God is good and He is working and He does sanctify and He does redeem our stories and He does help us to grow when we
Yeah.
submit those things to Him. And we don't stay in this place of shame, but we let Him
Yeah.
move us to a place of redemption. And we allow Him to dig it all up and show it to us so that He can then do something with it. And so, thank you for sharing all that. I know that's probably wasn't easy to do. And um, like you said, it's been a really hard beginning of the year for you. But I think it's so beautiful. And I'm glad that you are willing to do that hard work with him because I think it can only bring more honor and glory to him. So thank you for
And
sharing that.
I think we do need that validation, but we need to accept it from him. I think on
Yeah.
some level we think his validation is not enough. And what else do we want? What could possibly compare to his validation? And I mean, when she called me out by name, I thought that's what God does for us. He doesn't say, "Okay, you're a mess. I'm gonna leave you out there. You let me take the stage." He invites us up to share the stage with him. He gives us a place in his ministry. He calls us by name and says, "You are mine, and this is the work I have for you." And that's the validation,
Well,
right?
even the fact that you, like you said earlier, nobody knew who you were. Nobody really knew the work you were doing, all the effort and all the things you were putting in, how you were supporting her, how you were participating in it with her. Like nobody knew that, but she knew
Yeah.
and she never forgot it. Right. And in that moment, decades later, mentioned it because she knew and she remembered. And I think you're right. Like God knows all the hard work we do, especially those of us in this online writer space that do everything all by ourselves in our offices, right? Or our coffee shops. God knows the work that you're doing. He sees it and he remembers it and he keeps record of it. He doesn't forget. And I think we need to do a better job of not forgetting the work that he's doing in our lives and not
Yeah.
forgetting what's done in the secret, quiet spaces of our souls. It's just as important as the things that happen up on the stage.
Absolutely. Absolutely, if not more. Yeah.
Yeah, if not more. That's so true. All
Well,
right,
that
now that I'm like
definitely
wiping away my
reinforces.
tears. Ah,
Okay, so give us an update on what you've been doing and what your forward plans are, where you are in your project with your novel. Give us all the details.
okay. So I think I shared last time about the miscarriage and just needing to take time to regroup from that and um essentially rest in God's goodness. And he has been so good during that time. I'm still in the grieving process. It really has not been that long. I have to remind myself of that sometimes because a lot has happened in the last 2.5 months. And that's really not that long of time. And so I have had to acknowledge that, but also know when I had my last miscarriage, it was 2020. And while being in the middle of the pandemic, like it had happened just right after lockdowns. So like I was by myself, like no hugs from people. My mom couldn't even come over because we were like early days and all the things. And so people were bringing me food by and they would like leave it at my front door and then just kind of wave at me. I was like, thank you. It was very awkward. So while not having community, like I think it extended my ability to um recover, I don't know, heal. Like I was in that grief for a very, very long time with that miscarriage. And I think not having anything to do, like we had nowhere to go, nobody to talk to, and I'm an extrovert. So that was even like worse. But and I couldn't like process with other people, and my love language is physical touch, so, like, not even being able to get a hug from somebody, it really mattered to me, and so, like, all of that was very hard, and I think because of all that, I feel like I was in that grief longer, like, I was in it, like, just sitting in it for a longer period of time, and it felt like it was very consuming, and, I know that when I had the miscarriage this time around, there was a part of me was like, I do not want to sit in that grief for that long because it was all consuming. And I'm like, I don't want to sit with that. And so what I struggled with this time was not dismissing it and ignoring it, um, and allowing me to sit with it, but not being consumed by it. But this time around, I had my parents came down and stayed with us for the week that it happened, which was a beautiful, lovely, wonderful thing because what it did is it allowed me to just be by myself when I needed to be and come out and be with my family and kids when I needed to be. And it kept my kids having fun and hanging out with grandma and grandpa, right? Like my kids were in a safe space with people who loved them when I had to retreat. And so it allowed a lot of space that I didn't get necessarily the first time around. I did struggle with wanting to jump back in fully 100%, like, right off the bat, and after the first week, I realized that that was, like, the first week of the miscarriage and then the following week is the one that I was like, "Alright, we're just gonna, like, hit things that," and my body reminded me very quickly, like, "You just went through a very traumatic event. I am healing. You need to slow down." Right after that, we actually took a family trip up to Illinois, and I think going into a space where we had a week where we were like, my husband was off of work, I was in with my family, like, my whole family came in, so all my siblings, my nieces, my nephews, so just in the space of, like, celebrating, we had a family meal together where we did the Passover Seder and, which we've done as a family for as long as I can remember, so, like, decades. So, it's just like a family tradition, and so that just being in that space of community was very healing for me, but it also made me, like, just reevaluate things, and then came back, and a week later, I went to, a conference that I had planned on going, and even that was weird because it was like, "Am I gonna go? Am I not gonna go? Am I gonna go?" And it was, like, back and forth, and finally, I was like, "You know, when I heard about this conference back in the fall, I knew I was supposed to go. There are very few times in my life where I'm like, I know without a doubt that this is what my next right step is. And this was one of them. And so I was like, I just don't understand. Like I was supposed to go to this, and it wasn't working out with airline tickets and flights and then all of a sudden it did. I got a notification, Google notification. I'd forgotten to turn it off. I had decided I wasn't going to go. I even tried selling my ticket to two different people and neither one of them could go either. And so I had forgotten I turned off my Google notification. I got the alert and I was like, "Oh my gosh, there's a new flight that I hadn't seen before that had dropped enough that it was within budget." Because part of the problem was I live in a place that didn't have a direct flight to Las Vegas. And so it was going to be like this really like tough and I did actually have to do where I flew out at midnight the last night. And so it was a really rough trip home, But when I first was thinking about that, right after the miscarriage, I was like, I am not doing that. But a couple weeks later, I was like, I can do this. So I'm like, all right, I'm healing. Um, and so, anyways, all that to say, I went to that conference and getting away to that conference and just being by myself and only having to think about one thing was very, I think, helpful for me because it allowed me to just have some space where I wasn't thinking about things. Being home is just there's constant reminders about things. And with that space, I was there for one reason and was to be at the conference. And it was not a writing conference. I actually went to that conference knowing that I was there just as a business owner for my business. It was about using YouTube to grow your business. And I am not like I have put a lot of videos out on YouTube, but I do not have that many subscribers. So I don't have like a lot of growth or progress in that area. So I felt very much like a beginner. And I think being in that humble place of like, I'm not here for my personal brand that I'm trying to build up so much. And there's so much disappointment sometimes with that. Like, I haven't gotten my novel out yet. And I had these grand plans at the beginning of the year, and all those plans have gone by the wayside. Being in a space where none of that mattered allowed me to reevaluate things and look at it a little bit differently. And having to say, okay, wait a second, what are the main things in my life right now? The main things are I'm a mom that homeschools my kids. I run a business. I mean, I have multiple clients all around the world. I co-run this business. These people are depending on me. Like, it is not something I can just easily ignore, though sometimes I wish I could because it's not my passion, right? Like, it requires a lot of technical things from me. That's just what my position is. I co-run it with my mom, and she does more of the front facing stuff and I do a lot of the back end stuff. And it's just not as much fun sometimes. And I have been guilty of just kinda, like, feeling like, "Oh, this is the thing that gets in the way of me writing." I love homeschooling. It is our lifestyle. It is something that we're gonna do. It's not an option, like, it is what we are doing with our kids. And but there's been times where I've been like, "Ugh, this is getting in the way of my writing." I'm so exhausted by the end of the day between being a mom and running the home and homeschooling the kids and running this business. There's nothing left over for writing. And I have been in this state oftentimes where I'm like, "Ugh, this is all the stuff getting in the way of my writing." And I don't know what exactly. I just know that in that space, God did a number on my heart where he's like, these are the things I have asked you to steward. And I've asked you to steward the writing, but you have got to put it in its proper place. Right now, it is a side hustle. And yes, there are things you're going to do with it, but you have to put it in its proper place because you only have so many hours in the day, Rachel. And I don't know why I need to hear this lesson like 60 million times because it's not the first time I've heard this lesson. But it was just really helpful for me to put things in their proper place. I had some time before my flight left at midnight. The conference ended at 1, and then I had to leave at midnight. So, I spent some time that afternoon, evening, just writing down, "Okay, what is that gonna look like? What is that going to be like? And what does it mean to continue moving forward when things look like a mess?" Because I'll be honest with you, I'm gonna be really vulnerable and honest right now. I wanted to just burn everything to the ground in the end of March. I just wanted to be like, I have totally gone so far from what I wanted to do. All these plans, I had planned to release a novel in May and then a novel in September. That's not gonna happen. Um, I haven't published a podcast. I think I did one in that whole time, like from January to March. I published like 3 podcasts, I think, at that point. I haven't sent out any emails. I participated in the Devo thing that you did. You sent me the list of like names and I sent the person who won the giveaway, I sent her book, but like I never emailed all the people because I right after you sent that to me, I started miscarrying. But, like, it felt like a bunch of failure. Like, it just felt like failure one right after the other. Like, I haven't done these things. It looks like a mess. I haven't published to my socials in forever. I haven't done anything that I was going to do. And, um at the end of March, I felt like God was telling me to just take a breather, to reset. And one of the ways I did that is I did story prompts. So I hosted that and created a list of story prompts for each day during the month of April. And then I just started writing short stories or start writing like little snippets of things and just got back into the habit of writing things. And that was healing too. And so all of that to say that March, April, May have been this like huge, massive reset, this huge, massive healing. And it looks nothing like scaling. It looks like everything has crumbled into ashes and now it's being rebuilt up. I think God reminded me that at the beginning of the year, when he and I sat down together and I looked over the calendar and I made these plans, some of the things that I had written down was that I needed to go down deep. I needed to set some deep roots up so that things could flourish and so that things could grow. And I thought that meant one thing, and I started barreling towards it, but when everything fell apart and I know that sounds very much like hyperbole, like, I know that sounds like I'm being very dramatic, but everything literally just fell apart for me in the last couple months. But in all of that falling apart, I saw where all of the shallow roots were, and I saw where I had not done some good foundational work of setting my businesses up to be successful, whether it's my business or my side hustle business of writing. There were some things that were just not strong foundations. Um, Thankfully, my foundation of like my marriage and my kids and everything, those are deep roots that I've worked on for a lot in the last couple of years. And so that was all good. And homeschooling too was fine. But when it comes to my businesses, the roots were not deep, and it was very evident because everything just got ripped up and they didn't sustain the storm. And so the only reason that my business is still going is because I co-run the business. So my mom picked up the slack and I had to pull back. Um, so all of that to say, it's been a very humbling last couple of months. And I am trying to now catch up on some things, but let things go as well and not be such a perfectionist about stuff um and not look at what everything feels like was a failure, look at it as more of um this is a huge reset and now I'm going to just make progress forward because um what I thought was a good foundation was not, and I just need to be honest about that and let it be dug up and re-toiled and replant stuff. So yeah. I sorry, that was a very long-winded answer.
No, that was so good. And I love that you make the distinction between what looks like falling apart is actually building a new foundation. Because in order to scale, you can't just take a two-story building and decide, I'm going to add six more stories on top. You need a
Mhm.
different kind of foundation before you can make an eight-story building. And sometimes that means tearing down the two-story one and starting over. And so I feel like sometimes the crumbling of everything is the first step to scaling. Sometimes we have to get rid of everything that we had before in order to build something new. And I was thinking about this the other day with that story where it's a parable and Jesus is saying, make sure you count the cost so that you can finish building the building when you get started. And that one has never really sat well with me because I'm like, well, I mean, how are we supposed to know where we're going? We don't know where we're going, but God knows where we're going. And if He is our foundation, then He's going to be enough and make sure we're prepared in the right ways for what's ahead, even when we don't know what the cost will be. He does. And so I know your way ahead still looks very jumbled, you know? Um, and you may not know exactly what the cost is going to be and what he's asking you to do, but you can be confident in that he is building the right foundation that you need to do that going forward. And I love your heart to be faithful and allow him to let everything crumble because that's so hard. And I just want to encourage you not to count all those things as failures. I do that
It's not
too.
yeah.
I do that too. And feeling like a failure is, man, it's crushing. It's so defeating. But if God is the one tearing things down, that's not a failure, that's work. May not
Mhm,
look like progress, but it's still work.
mhm.
Um, and I can totally relate to months of feeling like things are just looking worse than they were. You know, when you go to
Yeah,
declutter, it gets a lot worse before it gets better. And
yeah.
so, just want
That's
to
so funny.
encourage.
Until you just said that, I didn't realize that it was mirroring, like, we were mirroring each other in that, like, you were going through your own tearing up and digging things up, and I was too, they just looked very different.
Right.
Um,
Yes.
but, like, they're both very valid.
Yeah.
And it's the whole idea of letting God do that work on you. And I just want to make sure to state this because in case anybody's listening takes this out of context, I'm not saying that the miscarriage was God's way of digging things up in me. I think that the miscarriage is just part of the fact that we live in a fallen world and our
Yeah.
bodies are fallen, you know. So I think the situation is what God is using to dig those things up. I don't think he caught the miscarriage. I don't think that he's punishing me or trying to any of that. I just want to make sure to be very clear about that because I think it's really easy in moments where you're going through a hard thing, especially when we think like, oh, this was God's plan. Like, no, it was not God's plan for my baby to die.
Yeah.
That's the result of sin, right? Like that is a fact that sin has just corrupted the world that we live in, but God never that was not God's desire from the beginning, you know, and that's not God's desire now. And so, but what God's desire is for us to be walking with Him in those moments of hardship and trial and tribulation and being obedient to what He's calling us to do because he is inviting us into the work of redemption, the work of restoring this world. You know, I had a conversation with my kids just the other day because, you know, sometimes I forget that they're still struggling with the grief too. It shows up in very interesting moments, and it showed up the other night, and they were um, complaining about Adam and Eve because they're like, if they hadn't sinned, then we wouldn't live in a fallen world, and that would mean the miscarriage wouldn't have happened. And they're like, we're gonna go back in time. You know, kids, they get so dramatic. My kids, at least, my kids are they're drama queens. We're gonna go back in time and we're gonna stop Adam and Eve from sinning. And I said, instead of focusing so much on what has happened in the past, let's keep our eyes on the fact that God is coming back one day. He is going to return and make right everything and restore everything. And in the moment right now, we're in the part where God is working through us to bring about that redemption. And that's what we're being invited into. I think we can lose sight of that so much when we're walking through suffering, when the things are tumbling and crumbling to the ground, we lose sight of the fact that God is working in our lives for our good and for his glory. And he's inviting us into it because ultimately that's what's going to bring about redemption and restoration. I mean, Christ's finished work on the cross is there, but we are in the season of restoration of God bringing and making things all right. And the fact that we get to be invited into the work, I think it goes back to what you're talking about that God gets the flowers, but we want him to get the flowers because we want him on that throne ruling over us in a place of, you know, visibility because heaven and earth have been reunited. We want him to get the flowers. And sometimes we so easily can lose sight of that in this world.
Mm. Okay, so I love how you have given God the space to show you what each thing has its proper place, right? I feel like that's really hard for us because we have our own priorities of what we think is most important. We want to, like you said, steward these messages well, and you want to steward this project well. And for you, you had a timeline attached to that, and now seems like everything is up in the air. Um, so moving forward, knowing that this writing life has its proper place and it isn't front and center, what does that look like for you moving forward?
So, moving forward, I did a lot of praying over and asking. I'm like, "Okay, so am I supposed to just put the novel aside for this year?" And very clearly, God was like, "No, that's supposed to go out this year, and it's supposed to go out in September." I'm like, I'm moving in September. This is crazy. But I looked at timelines and everything, and I'm like, okay, God's asking me to steward this. If it was anything else, I would look at it and make decisions to steward things well in that time. So why am I looking at this any differently? And I realized it was just fear. Like I've never published a novel before. I've published other books, but not a novel. And there is this like heightened sense of like, I'm going to be found out. Like everybody's going to find out that I really don't know what I'm doing after I publish this thing. And that's such a silly thing, but it's so right there. And I've just got to keep giving it over to God every single time. Um, so I am still going to publish it in September. That means I have to actually write. Um, it's been written a couple times. Somebody asked me that day, they're like, "You wrote this one already, though, right? Isn't it already written?" I'm like, "Yes and no, because I wrote it like I've written it probably like 4 times over, but here's the thing, God had me revise it, and I have a whole structure to it, and I know where things are going, and I see how God's outlining things, and I love how you said earlier, like, I wrote this book when I was fresh out of college, my first job, commuting to and from work on the train. That's when I first wrote this book. And when you said you're not the same person, like God has been showing you that, God has been showing me I am not the same person I was when I first wrote this book. And so it has to be revised because what I knew then is not what I know now. And what I want to say is not the same thing. And what he's shown me over the last 20 years or so, 15 years, um, is just so it I knew God then. I have come to respect him more in the last 5 years than I ever have. And talk about putting things in their proper place, putting him in his proper place. In the last 5 years, I've learned to look at him as a king and being on the throne of my life. And I never thought of him that way growing up. Everything about us being a temple of the Holy Spirit or us being, uh, priest or us being an ambassador, like none of these words meant anything to me. And I have come to see their significance and understand their impact on our lives and the fact that God is supposed to be on the throne of our lives. And if we have God in his proper place, then we make choices that flow out of that. So whereas I would have talked about things, even 5 years ago about our identity in Christ, I no longer say that phrase. I don't ever say that I don't talk about our identity in Christ because that I don't even know that that's really I know people say that and I know what they mean by it, but I'm like, my identity is an image bearer. My identity is not in what Christ has done on the cross. My identity is the fact that I'm supposed to reflect God's goodness and faithfulness. He created me for a purpose to be his image bearer. That has always been my identity. Christ redeemed it. And so I get what people are saying about that, but I don't know. For me, understanding that I have a purpose that falls outside of the fact that I'm loved and cared for and that Christ died for my sins and more about the fact that like your whole purpose on earth is to reflect God's goodness and glory. I don't know. It was a reframing that I think I needed. That novel that I wrote way back when, or even the novel that I revised 5 years ago, is not the novel that needs to go out in September. And I think that one of the things that has come out of everything crumbling is that in January, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I've got to get this novel out there and I've got to do it in a certain way, and it's gotta sell so many copies, and it's gotta show that it's making money because people are watching me because I talk about this on my podcast, and what if I screw up, this is going to be horrible and blah, blah, blah." And I think that in the last couple of months, I have been humbled enough to where my mindset is now more of like, okay, you don't know what the heck you're doing. You have principles, you have things that you know, but until you try them out, you can't really say one thing or one way or the other. And so instead of looking at it like, oh my gosh, the whole world's gonna think you're an idiot if you screw up, instead of looking at it like that, Rachel, why don't you approach it how I've asked you to approach it, which is take the thing that I've given you, put it out there using the things that I've helped you learn over the years, and try different things. And if they work, they work. If they don't, they don't. But you have an ability to analyze and put that out there in like a case study format, like you were talking about giftings earlier. Like you said, you have a gift for teaching, or you have the gift of teaching. I do too. And so I have this natural ability to take things and analyze them and make all the connections. And so it was like God was telling me in that moment, like, stop putting so much dang pressure on this. Just be obedient and do what you know to the best of your ability, but stop trying to hit a goal and instead just do the thing. And so that's where I find myself right now is in that space of like, I just need to do the thing. I just need to publish the novel. And my husband was really, really smart and really, really helpful. I was like, I just don't know. I had this and this plan. And he's like, Rachel, pick one thing that you want to trial with this novel, one strategy. That's what I mean when I'm saying like one thing. Pick one strategy and just try it with this one. And then the next novel, you can do a different strategy. And I was like, that's so smart. Like, what in that? I don't know. I felt like I had to do all the things all at the same time. So that is where I'm at right now. I'm going to release the novel. I picked a certain strategy I'm going to try with it. Whether or not it's successful, it's, to be seen. When I get on the other side of it, I am committed to just analyzing what worked, what didn't, and maybe why it did or why it didn't, and sharing that with people. And if it's helpful to them, great. If it's not, if they don't need that, okay, well, we'll move on. Um, and so that's kind of where I'm at with the novel. I also committed to making these little mini vlogs, which I don't know why. It was just something that when I was at the conference, I was like, or actually when I came back from the conference, when I was at the conference, I was like, I need to do a better job of documenting this process and not always feeling kind of like you were talking about earlier, not always feeling the need to like interpret it, but just documenting it. Not necessarily for somebody to learn, but just so that I have it and then I can look back on it. And so I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do that. And then I saw somebody else doing something similar and I was like, I can do that. I can follow what he's doing. I like the format. I like how simple it is. It's something I can achieve. And so I did a bunch. I didn't release them right away because I wanted to see if I could even do them first. And I was enjoying myself a lot more than I thought I was going to. And I figured out how I could do it. And so now I released the first one yesterday. I realized it's okay that they don't have to be like current. It's okay that I can be like day one and it was May 1st, and now it's May 21st. It's okay. And I think taking all of that pressure off for it to be like perfect in a certain way has just given me so much freedom, but also holding myself to like not just letting everything fall apart and like not rebuilding. Just holding myself to that.
I love that idea of just not having all that pressure, right? Like
Yeah.
God said, do the thing. He didn't say, do the thing and make sure the whole world approves of the way that you do it and,
Yeah.
applauds it and says it's wonderful. And we just keep coming back to this idea of obedience, right?
Mhm.
Of instead of striving, just be obedient, just do the thing. And
Right.
when we know that he's the king and he's on the throne, we can relinquish the results because we can't
Yeah.
be in charge of it. We can't change it. We can't force it. And it's going to be what he wants it to be. And he can do whatever he wants. Not that we don't do our share and our co creating with him, but we do our work and then we rest, right? That's the Sabbath.
Yeah.
God did
Yeah.
his work and then he rested. The
Yeah.
work was over. And I think sometimes we're like, still striving to try to be the high priest so that we can get into the presence of God, go through all the priest school. And Jesus is like, hello, the curtain is torn. All you have to do is walk in. You don't have to keep striving. Just do the thing. I love it. And I'm excited to see the thing you do.
Yeah. And I'll be excited too.
And you don't have to be nervous while you're writing because I've read some of it and it is very good. And I'm
Yeah.
waiting for the rest. No pressure, but
Yeah.
I am waiting.
I know. I know.
So is there anything else you want to share about the last month before we sign off.
I think if anything, I just share that if you are in a place where you're trying to figure out what your next step is, I would suggest just taking a pause and instead of trying to figure out how to like perfectly figure out all the dots, like just pause and just take some time when you're sitting there with God and just praying over. Maybe, even with your Bible, just go through scriptures um and just sit in the silence and just be willing to sit there for a bit and listen for his voice. Just know that even if you feel like you've heard from him, what you have heard, you might not fully understand. And you might think that it's going to look one way. And as it unfolds, it doesn't mean you didn't hear God's voice the first time. It's just that you're on a journey with him and he is God and he is revealing things to you in a way that you need them to be revealed in the timing that you need them to be revealed in order for him to really be able to help you grow and become more like him in reflecting his character. And he understands better than you can. And so, like I said, just because things don't look the way you thought they were going to be doesn't mean that you misheard God. It doesn't mean that you got it wrong. It just means that it's going to look different as it unfolds. And so just keep faith and continually submit and ask him what you need to be obedient about.
I'm so glad we're going through this year together because
Me too.
it was not what we thought it was gonna be, and God knew, and He brought us together, and it's just been, um, I was gonna say wonderful, but it's been everything. It's all the
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
agree. I agree. Well, if you are listening to today and something has resonated with you and you think it might resonate with a friend of yours, would you mind passing this podcast along to them? Obviously, we're not doing this because we want to get accolades, right? We just spent a whole episode talking about that. But we do know that there are many writers out there who are struggling with the same idea of trying to strive and what does it mean to steward well and what does it mean to create from a place of resting things at the feet of God. And so we're hoping that these conversations help them and you go back to the Lord and ask him, where am I striving? Where can I steward things better? And trusting those to him and resting with him in all of that work. And so if you don't mind sharing this with a friend, we'd appreciate it. And if this episode has resonated with you in any way, would you mind leaving a comment below the YouTube video or sending us a DM on Instagram? We'd appreciate it.